Today we talk about how big changes are what we want when a cycle fails, but little changes is what we need. I'm Dr. Mark Amols, and this is Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday. If you're one of the people who have gone through IVF and unfortunately did not have success, whether that was not getting embryos, whether that was not having success, I'm sorry. It's extremely disappointing and it's a very difficult situation to be in. But one of the things that happens after a cycle has failed or after someone is disappointed about their cycle is they want everything to change. And that's normal. I mean, if something's not working, it should all change. And I've talked about this before. But I want to help explain it a little bit better why you don't want everything to change. For example, if you do an embryo transfer and your embryo transfer is not successful, but let's say it implants, but then you have a miscarriage. If you change things too much, you may not even get pregnant the next time. In the same regards, if you're undergoing IVF and you get a bunch of embryos, but you are not successful because let's say none of the embryos make it to blastulation, you may want to change everything again because it didn't work. But in reality, you made more eggs this time than you did the time before. The point is, it's normal to want to scrap everything and start all over and change everything. It makes us feel better. But in reality, that isn't the right thing to do. The way I would look at this is imagine fertility, your doctor doing this, is kind of like making a meal. Imagine you're trying to make the best bowl of spaghetti that any man has ever made in the world. Now, when you're making that recipe, the first time you may realize you overcooked the noodles. So you adjust it and you don't cook the noodles so much. Now the noodles are perfect, but you realize the sauce isn't perfect. And then you're on, let's say, try number 10 and you feel like it's really good. But you try it again and you realize it's not right. But what you don't do is you don't say, I'm throwing away the whole recipe. I'm starting all the way from scratch. No. At that point, you've already had the basic foundation of your recipe. You're now making adjustments. Now it's a little bit more salt here, maybe a little bit more garlic, maybe taking something away. But the changes are going to be small because you have already found the right recipe. You're just fine-tuning it. And that's how you have to think of your fertility cycle. Now, the bad thing is, unfortunately, it's hard when you talk to a patient and you're trying to help them go through another cycle. As a doctor, you want to make them happy in a way. And so there are many doctors out there who will just change it, but they're not even changing it because they think it needs to change. They're changing it because they know if they don't change it, the patient's going to be upset. And so now, even though that spaghetti is so close to being perfect, they're going to change the spaghetti recipe because they know if they don't, you're going to go to another restaurant. In this situation, another fertility clinic. I've had it happen to myself. I had this patient, she may even be listening to this podcast, and she had a very severe case. And I explained to her that the protocol I was using was probably the only protocol that would be successful at this time because her ovarian reserve was so severe. There was no way a normal protocol that we use generically is going to work. And we had to go through multiple cycles, but we were able to get a normal embryo. And we got multiple embryos. It's just unfortunately with her severe diminished ovarian reserve, we were not able to get a lot of normal embryos. We just got a bunch of abnormal embryos, meaning aneuploid. After getting this normal embryo, where at a prior clinic, they couldn't even get embryos. They came to me and said, well, we're only getting, one embryo at a time or 2 embryos, but we're not getting normal ones. Can we change it up? And I said to them, well, no, we're getting embryos. This is already better than everything you've done before. If we change it too much, we may not even get embryos. I appreciate the fact that they may not become an euploid, but that has nothing to do with the stimulation. And we had this embryo, but in their mind, they didn't want to hear that. And they did. They left. And they went to another clinic where they did 3 more cycles. So at our clinic, they did 3. At that clinic, they did 3. At that new clinic, they never got a single embryo to make it to the blastocyst stage. They never even got the embryo to be tested. And when they came back, they said to me, you were right. We did horrible not using that protocol. And we didn't even get any embryos to make it to blastocyst. And I said to them, it was good that they had a chance to see that for themselves. And the good news about that story was they did end up doing the transfer with the embryo we had, and they did have success. But the thing is that I didn't change it to make them feel good. Now, I tell patients, listen, if you want to change it, I can change it, but I'm 100% honest, you're going to hurt your cycle. And the reason why is because you don't just change to change. You change to fix the things that need to be fixed. You've heard me say this many times before. One of the greatest things about IVF is that you can see what's wrong. You can make the adjustments you need to make. You can't say that with other things like IUIs. When the IUI doesn't work, you're not going to know why unless the sperm's bad. But no one knows why it didn't work. But in IVF, we see the eggs. We see the fertilization. We see the embryos growing if they look like they're fragmenting or not. The point is, we're able to make adjustments. So if you're able to make adjustments, why would you want your doctor just to try something else? I mean, isn't that the point of medicine? Is that we can adjust, we can think our way through this and come up with the best solution? And so I know it's frustrating when it doesn't work. But what's really important is to sit down with your doctor and find out what did work. And then you can make the adjustments to fix the things that didn't work. And don't be shocked if those adjustments are just that, small adjustments. Just adding a little bit more salt and a little less pepper to that spaghetti to make sure it's just perfect, versus starting all over again. It makes us feel good, but the problem is that we weren't that far off with the recipe. We were fairly close, and we don't have to make that big of a change. Now, not every doctor is going to feel forced to have to change the protocol, but I can assure you, many do. And so it's important to talk to your doctor and let them know, if you think this is best, I'm fine with doing it again. If you want to make small adjustments, that's fine. But I wouldn't want to pressure a doctor into changing something unless they thought it was going to benefit you. And if you're concerned that maybe they aren't thinking out of the box, they're not making adjustments, well, that's where you get a second opinion. And there's nothing wrong with second opinions. I'm never frustrated when one of my patients get a second opinion. I never think, God, don't they trust me? No, I know, because I'm not the holder of all knowledge. I know that my interpretation of something may not be perfect. My view might be skewed. And so if someone gets a second opinion, they come back to me, I take that in and think, can I help my patient with that information? Now, I may not agree with it, and I'll tell them why I don't agree with it, or can show them the evidence of why it's wrong. But it never hurts for me to have someone get a second opinion, because this is important. This is your chance to build your family. There is nothing wrong getting a second opinion. And there's many doctors like myself where you can go online and just get a second opinion, so that way you don't have to feel that you're leaving your doctor. It's a special relationship we have with our patients. I know that. All fertility doctors know that. But it's also important for you to be able to be an advocate for yourself. If you ever feel you need another opinion, don't feel bad for getting it. See, the thing is that as patients, when we see the same medications, the same process, it feels like we're doing the exact same thing over again. We're like, well, why would there be a different change if everything's still the same? But when you think about it, the parts can be the same, but the outcome can be different. I mean, look at Apple phones and Android phones. If you really take them apart and put them on a table, they look exactly the same. It's only when you put the parts together in certain ways do they look different and act different. Same thing with spaghetti. Everyone uses noodles. Everyone uses certain sauces. It's just when you change the ingredients, when you put more of one, less of another, is when you see change. That is what you're looking for. You're not looking for a completely different recipe. You're just looking for something that can make adjustments for you. If it's too salty, less salt. If it's too spicy, less red pepper. And if it's too saucy, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with too much sauce in your spaghetti. This is going to be the last podcast of 2023. I really hope all of you guys enjoyed the podcast this year. And I can tell you I've had fun. And I'm hoping I've helped people. And maybe if not you, maybe you told a friend about it and they were able to be helped by this. I can't thank you enough for listening to podcasts, and I appreciate everyone who provides me ideas for these podcasts. And I always recommend, if you have one, send it to me at tbft@newdirectionfertility.com. I'll be more than happy to look at and possibly do a podcast on it. As I always say, if you love this podcast, please tell people about it and give us a 5-star review on your favorite medium if you love this podcast. As always, I say I look forward to talking to you next week, but this time it's going to be 2 weeks. It won't be till the new year till I come back for the next podcast. So I wish you all a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and remember, you don't have to change the recipe completely, you just have to make adjustments. I'm Dr. Mark Amols, and this is Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday.